We don't make it live. Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. I'm Nitin Gokhale and I'm coming to you live from Bengaluru, where I spent almost the entire day either going around the Aero India 2021 show or meeting defense ministers of different countries across the Indian Ocean region. And the subject, of course, as you can see, it's about aerospace power in the coming decade. There is, of course, the glimpse of what aerospace will look like in the coming decade at the Aero India show, as well as how it will cope up with the changes in geopolitical scenario. All that is linked to security and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region. And to discuss what is going to be one of the important issues as far as aerospace power is concerned is Air Marshal SBP Sinha with me. He retired from Central Air Command as the Commander-in-Chief, but has had extensive experience in planning for the future. You can call it perspective planning, you can call it acquisition planning, and someone who understands what aerospace power will look like in the coming decade. I'll come to him in a moment, but before that, I want to highlight what the IAF Chief, Air Chief Marshal RKS Bhadauria said in his opening address to the conclave of the air chiefs from Indian Ocean region. And he was basically highlighting how technology and the way way of war fighting is changing rapidly, and how Air Force is now preparing itself to meet that challenge. For instance, if you look at his highlights of his speech, he said cross-linking of physical and digital and cognitive domains has complicated war fighting. Of course, there are no boundaries anymore because of cyberspace and also space weapons being used by different countries. There are no limitations to land or land borders or maritime borders. And as he rightly points out there, any attack can come from anywhere, where in fact there are no boundaries. Easy availability of disruptive technology like drones and drone swarms is going to allow smaller players like non-state actors to also have parity with state actors or nation. And the Syrian conflict, as well as the Armenian and Azerbaijan war, highlighted changing nature of modern warfare. Also, space-based assets are something that are going to play a crucial role, not just for ISR, that is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, but also for maybe using kinetic weapons, energy weapons, directed weapons from the space can be used. And of course, India's adversaries are likely to target India's space, electronic, and IT infrastructure. So, therefore, the war fighting or the nature of war fighting is undergoing rapid changes. And is India prepared for that? Is something that we are going to discuss. And of course, we will take your questions as we go along. But let me take Air Marshal Sinha or his views first before I come to your questions as we go along. Air Marshal Sinha, good evening and welcome to this program.
Good evening, Nitin, and good evening to all your viewers. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. You have always been one of our favored guests because of your knowledge and extensive experience in the Air Force. So I was just highlighting what the Air Chief said at the speech yesterday in the conclave of the Air Chiefs of the Indian Ocean region. And you have dealt with rapid changes in warfighting, nature of warfighting over the past 20 years or so. How do you see this evolving over the next decade? And as I mentioned, new security challenges are there, in multi-domain awareness has to be there, and of course several other things. Your first impression about what's likely to happen in the next decade or so?
See, most rapid changes are taking place in the domain of cyber and space and electronic warfare. So, in addition to developing capability, one has to look at building up assets in these areas and also protecting your assets from enemies or adversaries attack to these assets. So if you see the number of satellites that we have today, these numbers are going to rapidly increase, like you said, for ISR and for many other developmental activities for the nation. We need to ensure their functioning and no interference from our adversaries, while we should have the capability to deter anybody from taking on our assets in the space. Similarly, the cyber domain is something which is not only in war, it is happening continuously even during the peacetime. And
True.
the type of warfare is changing rapidly from the conventional weapons that were used earlier to all kinds of things of smaller caliber and more of a usage to keep the enemy on tenterhooks and disrupt your entire technologies and the ability to fight. And this we saw with the swarm UAVs being used against the tanks and other things. So these capabilities have to be countered. And you will all be glad to know that DRDO has developed capability to handle all these small UAVs, which are difficult to detect and can disrupt any operations and become a security threat in any part of the country. It need not be only at the borders. It could be in a gathering. It could be anywhere. So we have evolved both soft kill and hard kill capability coupled with capability to detect these UAVs at reasonably long ranges to be able to neutralize their movement towards the objective area. And to be able to counter the cyber threat, you have to have very robust networks today so that your communication links cannot be disrupted. And this is an area where the forces have to focus very clearly to have secure network environment to operate.
Exactly. That's what I think the war fighting is going to look like. And as I can visualize, especially going around the Aero India show over the last 2 days, more and more smaller companies, perhaps incubated by DRDO or even encouraged by DRDO or supported by DRDO, are looking at disruptive technologies to be inducted into the Indian Air Force and, of course, the other two armed forces. But in fact, there's one question that has come up about HAL's CATS Infinity for UAV in war zone. How good is that? Is what Abhishek Kale is asking on the program, and perhaps you would be able to tell us whether this CATS, which is now being offered or at least is on display, will play a major role going forward. Marshal Sinha?
Yeah, see, it is a concept, and every concept is as good as you intend to make it work. Now, HAL is a major industry that produces aircraft. So while it is making the aircraft, it also manufactures this UAV which can fly in formation with this aircraft. What are you doing? The biggest advantage of unmanned aircraft is that it reduces the risk element. So while you are sending one or two fighters which are manned, you are sending a larger number of aircraft which are unmanned. And thereby you are able to create a larger punch, carry more weapons, and the risk element is much, much lesser. And since these aircraft which are unmanned come at a lower cost, you will be able to put more number of them in the air. And actually, like you talk of swarm UAVs, now you could have a fleet of fighters, which is a combination of manned and unmanned. And they go together and carry out the task and come back safely. And it is a very viable concept. The concept has to be finally proven. It will take some time, maybe 2 to 3 years, till the unmanned aircraft is developed. And then formation flying is not a matter of difficulty because it is to do with algorithms. The fighter aircraft which is manned will fly and the algorithms will help it remain in position. You must have seen displays of swarm UAVs where they maintain their position in all kinds of displays. So
That's
developing
true.
the algorithm is not a major issue. It can be done easily.
Yes. In fact, there is a related question from Komerula Reddy. He says how new loyal wingman and catch system will impact India's adversaries. We have been exactly discussing this same thing, but maybe you want to elaborate. And he talks about Pak military has budgets for fifth and sixth generation warfare assets, which I don't think is correct
Yeah,
assumption,
I
but
think
you can clarify.
yeah, Pakistan has a very weak conventional force. So talking about fifth and sixth generation technology is going overboard.
That's right.
They do not have the capability, neither do they have the economy to be able to develop beyond what they are in right now.
Yes.
But you must understand that in any combat, numbers do matter because it is finally the weight of attack that you have to put across to be able to annihilate a target. So if you have large number of unmanned aircraft which can fly in formation with a manned aircraft, you are increasing the weight of attack with minimal risk element.
That's true. You're bringing in more numbers, and it is also both about quantity and quality when you're
Yes.
doing that, and that's how you can deter the adversary or even overcome the adversary's plans whenever a hot war is initiated or even a skirmish is initiated. I also
See,
want
when
to
you're
talk
carrying
about
out an attack, the initiative rests with the attacker because the number of interceptors you can launch at any given time are numbered. So if
yes,
you have large number of these aircraft, it will create a decision dilemma for the interceptors as to what to go for, the man, non-man. It's very difficult to make out because you're going against target blips, and they're all
exactly.
flying with similar parameters.
So, if we are thinking of that, is the Indian Air Force thinking of that? I'm sure India's adversary is also thinking of that. So, simultaneously, the counter strategy or a counter technology, something that will counter that kind of attack from the adversary, will also be have to be developed. Which I'm sure Indian Air Force is working with some of the Indian companies or Indian innovators. What's your information? Even DRDO may be working on that, since you are now a consultant with DRDO. You might know if we are also working on countering such threats from the adversary.
See, these threats are right now evolving, and so are the counters, which are under discussion as to how these things will evolve and how to counter them. And this is a continuous process. And when it comes to countering the airborne threats, you have to look at the counters available both in the airborne domain as well as in the surface domain. And we are laying great emphasis on both the airborne element of shooting the adversarial airborne platforms, as well as shooting them from ground-based long-range surface-to-air missiles, so that you can take them on before they enter your borders.
Exactly. I think you've actually hit the nail on the head. But going forward, now there are some other questions about MMRCA 2.0, also called, I think, officially now MRFA. And Vijay C is asking this question. Can you please let us know the status of MMRCA 2.0? Is it ever going to happen, or is India looking at Indian fighter jets? I think we've discussed this, but I mean earlier in some of the earlier programs, and especially after 83 LCA Tejas have been ordered by the Indian Air Force, and there is a now quite a positive feeling that Indian aerospace industry will take off from here. What's your view? What will happen to MRFA or MMRCA 2.0 as it is called?
Yeah, before I come to MRFA, the most important thing is that this third decade of the century has started on a very bright note for the Indian aviation sector altogether, including the Indian Air Force and the industry. In the beginning of the year, in January, government cleared this 83 aircraft procurement, and just 2 days back, the contract was signed with HAL. This contract by itself is the largest single aircraft procurement contract because we have like 272 Su-30s. They were all bought in tranches of 30, 40 at a time. You have never bought such large number of aircraft in one go. And this will be a huge investment and a boost to the Indian aviation industry. And it will also encourage industries to start putting in their money into the defense sector, and it will show its own results. And today, our industry has become competitive, and people want to buy Indian equipment which are manufactured in India. This will bring greater revenue to the industry, and there'll be more investment. And this is how our industry and capability will build up in very few years from now. As far as the fighter requirements of Indian Air Force are concerned, the LCA Mark 1 was evolved and developed to replace the MiG-21 fleet. We found that the Mark 1 had close to 53 shortcomings. Some were minor and few were major. So we evolved a concept of developing a Mark II to overcome these deficiencies. And in that, the aircraft was being redesigned with a longer fuselage and we required a more powerful engine. So when we did a holistic study, we found that 45 of these shortcomings could be overcome in the same airframe as the Mark I. And the rest were minor issues which were not going to affect your operations or maintenance. So what we did, we made this Mark 1A so that we cut short the development time and there is not much delay in the productionization of the aircraft, and that is how Mark 1A was evolved. So today the Mark 1A is fully capable and a much more potent aircraft, a multi-role aircraft to replace the MiG-21s.
Right.
And now we said what to do with the Mark 2, because now you had reached a level where you had command and control over many development and technologies. So it was decided that the Mark II will be developed to replace the Mirage 2000, Jaguar and the MiG-29 fleets, which are due to retire in the period of 2030 to 2035.
Correct.
And the first prototype of the Mark II will roll out by August next year to match with the Golden Jubilee of the Independence. And it will be productionized shortly. Over and above that, we are developing the 5th generation fighter aircraft called AMCA, which is the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft. So this will be our 5th generation aircraft. And this will also be productionized hopefully by 2034, 2035. So this is as far as the Indian aircraft are concerned.
That is the roadmap that the Indian Air Force has, or at least the national planners have.
Yeah. So this is these processes are already cleared and they are in the development phases. Now there is no denying the fact that Indian Air Force has shortage of aircraft, and that is how this MRFA multi-role fighter aircraft project has been started. And as far as I know, that there is a request for information from various international vendors for 114 aircraft.
True.
So that is the stage that is publicly known, and what shape it will take and which firm is selected and how that will happen only once the RFP has been issued. The RFP has not yet been issued because the RFP will be approved after the approval of the Defence Acquisition Council. So I am not certain of where the case is, but the RFP has not yet been issued.
Right. That, of course, that is a moot point, and I think only the Indian Air Force and the MOD will know, and we are not going there in any case. But there is the other question people have been asking, and I think Ramesh VG has asked this question. Kaveri, where is it going to come from? And although it has failed in the previous years, will Kaveri be the chosen engine going forward? Is a question that many people ask, actually.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and a lot of people are concerned about Kaveri. But I'll start with the statement that Kaveri has not failed.
Right.
See, you cannot develop an engine in isolation. An aero engine cannot be developed in isolation. An engine has always got to be mated with an aircraft. So when you develop an aircraft, you decide to also develop an engine. The Kaveri engine development started to be able to power the LCA, Tejas. We did not succeed in developing the engine, and therefore the Tejas today flies with an imported engine.
Exactly.
But we did develop a large number of technologies, and if say a fully developed Kaveri was on a scale of 100, what we have achieved is close to 70 to 75% of capability to develop an engine. And the Kaveri engine derivative, which does not have the afterburner, will be used in our unmanned combat aircraft, the unmanned fighter strike aircraft and all that we are developing. And you will shortly see these engines flying. Now, when it comes to developing the AMCA, our fifth generation fighter aircraft, we intend to develop an engine indigenously, but we have some shortfalls in our technology. So what we are going to do is we are going to partner with one of the reputed global engine houses to be able to fill this gap of technologies and develop a full-fledged 110 kilonewton thrust engine, which will be powering the AMCA. Two engines will be there in each of the AMCA. And once we develop this engine, now we can modify this engine to various requirements, and thereafter we will become independent as far as aero engines to the fighters are concerned. And having stabilized the fighter engines, we can gradually move on to the engines for transport aircraft and helicopters.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, once that happens, then I think the Indian aerospace industry will be self-sufficient going forward, because this has been a gradual process. And this whole discussion that we've had, in fact, 2 weeks ago on our other sister concern or other website, bharatshakti.in, where one of the former directors of Aeronautical Development Agency, Commodore Balaji, also mentioned this, that how actually LCA has taken about 20 years and not 30 years, as everybody tends to complain that it's taken so long. But that notwithstanding, I think if the engine can be developed for India's fighter jets and going forward for helicopters, then I think the Indian aerospace industry will really have come of age at that stage. And then, of course, they have to also look at many other disruptive technologies that we started discussing right at the beginning of the program. But do you see any possibility of the fighter jets being made redundant in the Indian context once people are talking about UAVs and how Azerbaijan and Armenia fought their war this time with the UAVs and the unmanned systems? Is that a possibility in the Indian context at all? Because that's a question I was confronted with during these last 2 days. That why are we going in for costly fighter aircraft, rather than developing disruptive technologies or RPAs and UAVs and UCAVs? What's your view on that? You being a fighter pilot yourself all your career.
See, fighters cannot be wished away. The issue is whether they'll be manned or unmanned. And that is why when you talk of sixth generation technologies, you are designing a fighter which in few missions could be manned, and the same aircraft could be unmanned in few missions. So all these UCAVs and all that you're talking about are basically doing the role of strike aircraft fighters. The speeds may be less, but the point is, in the air battle, you take the war into the enemy territory, and you have to enter the enemy territory and be able to deliver weapons within the enemy territory. So you will require, you may call them whatever it is. The issue is only that whether it is manned or unmanned. So you will
Right.
continue with the combination of manned and unmanned, because there are many targets where artificial intelligence and data links may not work, because data links do have latency because of the SATCOM half a second latency. So when you have to strike targets precisely with minimal collateral damage, you cannot risk. You will have to put a human being on the spot, and that is where the manned fighters will play a crucial role. So as the technologies evolve, the number of unmanned fighters will increase. But in the present context and foreseeable a decade or two, manned fighters will play a very crucial role.
I'm glad you clarified that. But as you can see, you spoke about data link just now. There's this question from Shubham Sharma. He says, "How are we doing as far as data fusion and electronic suite is concerned? Is it at par with Western counterparts?" You would be able to
Yeah,
answer that yourself again, because you
yeah,
work with
I will.
all these.
I'm glad, you have a very informed audience. When you talk of fifth generation technologies, one of the key requirements is, state of the art avionics and sensors. And since you have a large number of onboard sensors, the sensor data integration is crucial. And you get also a lot of information through the network. So the network data and your onboard data also has to be enmeshed and integrated. So just for information, today we have indigenous ISA radar which is at an advanced stage of development and testing. It is already flying on one of the original LCA prototypes. Then we have a infrared search and tracker, which is also at an advanced stage of development. We are having excellent EW suits, and all this will be there in the LCA Mark II, because you will have your own indigenous ISA radar, you will have your own IRST infrared search and tracker, you will have your own EW sensors, you will have your own missile approach warning sensors. So all these sensors will be there, and you will have the software to be able to integrate these data from all these sensors plus your airborne network and be able to display all this to the pilot. So
Yeah, you're right
these
about that.
sensors are being developed actually for our FGFA AMCA. So the LCA Mark II will be a 4.5 generation, but it will have 5th generation sensors and technology.
Exactly. In fact, like you just mentioned, that our audience is very informed. In fact, sometimes I fear that I have no answers to some of the questions because I'm not a technology geek or even somebody who's flown fighters like you have. Look at this question from Jays. He says the Chinese have put out a paper on a possible plasma-based engine. Does the military and government have an organization for such future fighter tech? I don't know whether that is a reality, but the question is very interesting.
Yeah, see, as far as aero engines are concerned, they are right now flying on aviation turbine fuel, that is basically kerosene. And we are using certain biofuels to be able to mix them without deteriorating their performance and thereby bring the costs of operation down. That is the technology that is evolving, and it is under trials and testing. We have already done it in few transport aircraft. Now, I am not aware of any plasma-based aero engine. It could be for other applications, maybe aerospace, the propulsion element for missiles and something else.
Right.
But I am right now not aware of any technology related to an aero engine or that is being used in missiles as of now.
Exactly. So that's why it's good to have somebody like you who's a specialist. There is another very interesting question from Falgun Zode. He is asking whether we are developing quantum technology as China is ahead in this sector. I'm sure there is a lot of work happening in quantum technology too. But you may want to add to the information or the question you may want to answer here.
Yeah, quantum technology is taken off in a big way in India, and it is not necessarily only for the aviation sector. It is across many sectors, and this is happening. There are many startups and all who are into it. And whatever you read about China, you have to always take it with a pinch of salt, because no doubt that their technology is actually advanced, but they do a lot of propaganda, and on the ground it is not actually so as it is brought out by them in Global Times and other videos that they release.
Yes. In fact, that's an important point that you make, because what happens is, because we don't know the language and we don't read their language newspapers or language digital platforms, we tend to only go by what the Global Times says really in that. But that's something that we have to be aware of, and I think we constantly keep saying this on our channel, that don't take everything that China is doing at face value. In fact, we should always discount many of these claims that China makes. But that notwithstanding, there are some interesting questions about. Uh, Again, Franklin D'Souza has this question: is India working with pulse detonating engine? Now, this is getting into a real specialist domain, and I neither have the expertise nor the time going forward. As we come to the end of the program, I must say this, that there are, in the number of questions that have come, there is one question which is being repeated by many people, that has Iran conducted a surgical strike inside Pakistan like India has done in POK earlier in 2016. Unfortunately, that's a different subject, and I don't have any clue at the moment. Although I did interview the defense minister of Iran this afternoon after he finished participating in the defense ministers conclave of the Indian Ocean region. But we will see how it goes as far as those developments are concerned. But clearly India is keeping pace with developing technology, disruptive technology, and the needs for the future. And as Air Marshal Sinha has told us, that a lot of research is going on, a lot of planning is happening in India. And I think this HAL order would re-energize the Indian aerospace sector going forward. Any final thoughts, Marshal Sinha, before we close the program?
Yeah, while we talk of capabilities of the armed forces, it is equally important to energize our research and development and production capabilities, because this is what will bring strength to the national capabilities, and you will be able to invest more money into design and development and come out with more and more technologies and more systems and weapons. So this 83 LCA is the beginning of the opening of the industry, and you will see more and more things happening in relation to all three services, Army, Navy, and Air Force. You'll see more and more indigenous systems getting inducted, more and more industries wanting to get into defense sector and invest more money. And the money is not only in production; they will also invest money in R&D, because it will reap benefits for them, and it will overall build the national capability to be able to sustain our armed forces and be able to provide the required deterrence to our adversaries, so that they don't try anything unusual with us.
Exactly. I think those are very important thoughts and important input for our viewers. I'm going to just take a last opinion. Actually, it's not a question, although he has posed this as a question. Devendra Kumar has this important observation, I would say, about Tejas Mark 1A and Mark 1A, Mark 1 and Mark 1A, converted into lines of Tempest 6th generation fighter minus stealth to perform both manned and unmanned missions in the future. Maybe possible, may not be, but certainly going forward, I think modern technology, disruptive technology is going to be order of the day as far as the Air Force is concerned. If you want to come in on that, Marshal Sinha, I will close after this thought if you have on this question or this opinion.
See, the aircraft today, the LCA Mark 1 and Mark 1A, they are 4 plus generation aircraft. They have excellent autopilots. So making them unmanned and making them fly is not a very difficult thing, because if you take a catapult takeoff on a carrier, it is almost automated. The landing has to be manual, but the catapult takeoffs are more or less automated. So we already have the UAVs flying, and we are making the unmanned fighter strike aircraft, which is basically a full-fledged aircraft that will be flying on autopilot and controlled from the ground. So making a flying aircraft into an unmanned aircraft is not very difficult, because these capabilities and data link capabilities exist, and
In
it can
fact,
be done in a short period of time.
that's a major revelation, I must say, and I don't think too many people are aware of this program or this plan. I'm glad you put this out on our channel in our discussion. We will keep coming back to you whenever we have such programs, and of course, we are planning that every week, once a week, we should have such interactive program on various topics of interest, be it in defense, foreign policy, or strategic affairs. But we are glad that there is a lot of response, a lot of curiosity, and a lot of questioning about India's plans and India's, the doctrines or military operations going forward. But on that note, I must end here. We've had 2 days of Aero India. There is the third day tomorrow. Hopefully, there will be something more that one can see there. I have actually done my weekly program, Simply Nitin, which comes on air at 7 p.m. on every Saturday. Has been done, the recording has been done at the Aero India show this time. Do look out for it. Also, keep supporting us, subscribing to our YouTube channel. Look at our handles on social media platforms like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, if you like our work, do support us in various ways by donating to us or giving us a monthly subscription. And the details are on your screen, at the bottom of the screen. In fact, how you can support us, the link is there. Do visit that. And Marshal Sinha, thank you very much for taking time off. I know you've had a busy day at the Aero India, and I'm sure you have a social evening planned going forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.